And in terms of the songwriting, as you say, it's gotten more sophisticated, and the lyrics in these songs for people. I mean, there's a song called "Exegetic Chains," and for people who want to perform exegesis on these songs, there's a lot of stuff to be mined. Allusions to antiquity and classical writing, but also allusions to other music, including other mountain goat songs and the boombox itself. So do those things just happen on the fly, or is that a kind of intended thing as you're setting off on the songwriting process?
So with Exegetic Chains, God, I could try and play that one. It hasn't been played since it was recorded. But with Exegetic Chains, I knew it was going to be the last one, and it was a phrase that Chuvin had used as he was wrapping up his book. Right? It was not wanting to be bound by exegetic chains in one's interpretation of history. And at this point, I haven't read a text like this in years. But when I was a student of classics, I was a very excitable student, right? I would read this stuff and get extremely
excitable.
Imagine,
I can't
right?
believe that.
But I mean, it was that sort of writing, that sort of thinking when you're deep enough inside your subject to say to your listener, well, look, let's not be bound by exegetic chains here. And the listener, instead of going, oh, well, foo-ha-ra, who's using 50-cent words now, instead just goes, oh, yeah, I know what you're saying, right? I like that, being at that level of discourse with somebody, being able to share in that kind of discourse. And but it's also still funny. It's always a little funny when you're in your academic speak, right? I think if it ever stops being funny, you need to step back a little and make sure you know it's funny, right? And so I read it and I went, oh yeah, Exegetic Chains. I wrote that down. I thought perfect song title, and but it immediately suggested, readings, right? And that's what the song is about, is how to read things, and so I'm looking at the lyrics now. When I said the stories that you tell, I was looking for a rhyme, right? Mm-hmm. I knew them well, right? And I sang Justin's lyric there. I was like, oh, hey, that's nice. That's kind of, what if I did that, And it's very transgressive when you make...
That's Justin Vernon of Bon Iver.
Yeah, and when you make a reference without citing it, there's something in that is very powerful musically, because it's a well, this is something that my professor, Ellen Finkelpearl, used to work on, was the question of allusion in classical literature, and who's exercising power over whom when somebody bites somebody else's subject. I don't want to misquote her studies, but we often think of influence as flowing in one direction. The person who coined a phrase is the one who has the power over the person who then uses it. But I don't know how true that is. I think there's a conversation that takes place in allusion. And I think it's often a more powerful conversation when it's not a citation, when it is in fact something that you take and incorporate. This is controversial because, you can also say, well, what about the person who wrote it? Don't they deserve credit? And yeah, that's true. But at the same time, people listen to the Mountain Goats. The percentage of those people who recognize Blood Bank being quoted is incredibly high, right? It's like, depends on what your source is, and what the relationship your own work has to that source. There's a lot of questions, a lot of exegetical questions to be answered there that I like. It looks like I'm building up to playing the song, but I'm not even sure I know the changes. It's in A, I know, because it also is directly quoting this year, right? What's the minor? It's C sharp.
Well, it's up to. I know you've got another song locked and loaded.
It's radio. Let's see what happens, and we can always try the other one.
All right.
Look closely at the shadows on the ground beneath the trees. The labors of Hercules, wild grasses on the hillsides, rippling in the wind. Sibylle Unchained, the songs you sing at Christmas time, the stories that you tell. Well, I knew them well. Yes, I knew them say your prayers to whomever you call out to in the night. Keep the chains tight. Make it through this year. If it kills you outright. The coins they toss at dancers whirling in the city square. Music on the air. The places where we met to share our secrets now and then. We will see them again. Change will come. Stay warm inside the ripple of the Panasonic hum. It grinds and it roars, headed somewhere better. If I have to crawl there on all fours, say your prayers to whomever you call out to in the night. Keep the chains tight. Make it through this year. If it kills us outright.
John Darnielle live at home with Exegetic Chains, which is the concluding song on the album Songs for Pierre Chuvin. And John, when I first heard that song, I found myself, at the end of listening to this album about, pagans being raided and their temples destroyed and, hiding in the woods or whatever. And then this song at the end, I just found myself kind of with a lump in my throat. Did you know when you were writing that song that it could have that kind of impact on people who did in fact get the references?
When I write, I'm not in a trance, but I am in an automatic zone. Like I'm not thinking about how it's going to be received. I'm a listener when I'm writing. Like, so I'm writing, and when I needed a rhyme for Stories That You Tell, and then I thought of Blood Bank, and it just made me feel really happy, but also that song makes me cry, so it put me in that zone. It gets me too, because I get sad when I think about the pagans. I get sad when I think about cults that weren't hurting anybody, that got forced out of history, but I also, this song is also about me and my audience, or our audience, that we gather in rooms to sing songs together.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, like, all I do is complain about having to be on tour, right? It's like, because I don't like living in the bus and I can't sleep out there and I miss my children. But and I was like, oh, there's gonna be a big growth year. And when I say growth, it's like with audiences. That's when growth takes place in a real room. There's nothing like live performance. And so yeah, when I was writing this, I hadn't been off out of the studio for a week, and I had no idea how bad it was going to get. But I was thinking about beginning to reflect on how special it is to have the privilege of sharing a room with people, and responding to music.